Welcome to Talking Industrial Automation, a podcast where you get to know the people who make modern industrial automation possible. You'll get to hear from CSIA system integrators and industry partners to get a better understanding of how they help their clients solve process challenges and how they earn success in their careers. Along the way, we'll touch on system integration best practices, technology, trends, and challenges. Whether you are a manufacturer, end user, supplier, or system integrator, you will enjoy the insights CSIA members bring to this podcast. Let's get started. Hi, my name is Lisa Richter, the host of Talking Industrial Automation, a podcast where you get to know the people who make modern industrial automation and processing possible. In today's episode, we're picking the brain of Jim Biehl, a shareholder with Clayton and McKervey, a global tax and accounting firm in Southfield, Michigan. In this role, Jim uses user-friendly communication tools and a hands-on client service approach to help business owners navigate the strategic discussions needed to maximize opportunities and minimize risk. Jim, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. For starters, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your background?
Well, as you had mentioned, I am a shareholder at Clayton McKervey. We're a regional CPA firm. Southfield's just north of Detroit, around 20 minutes. The firm is a niched practice that's focused exclusively on closely held for-profit businesses. I've been in that role for over 20 years as a shareholder. I'm responsible for around 25 different client relationships, predominantly manufacturing, which would include the traditional accounting type things of financial statements and tax returns and tax planning and strategy. But I also get much more involved in the operational advice and counsel, just aimed at improving performance with the clients that I deal with.
So could you talk a little bit more about Clayton McKervey's relationship with CSIA?
Yeah, we've been involved over the last few years. We've got an emerging system integrators practice. So, and then being based in Detroit, an engineering hub, we recognize the value of associating with leaders in this growing industry. So our integrators group beelined right to the CSIA, and we've loved the relationship so far. We've participated, I think, in the annual conference. We're serving, I think, Sarah Russell, one of our shareholders, is on the partner committee. Currently, I think Tim Finnerty in our office, another shareholder, is working with the statistics committee to look for ways to help members better understand their financial health. And I think the focus is more on KPIs and metrics and dashboards and those types of things.
Why is it important for organizations to work with a company that understands their business?
Well, I guess a cornerstone of our service philosophy is to invest time in understanding the clients and their business. We find that time is never wasted. It ultimately positions us to ask better questions in order to identify, issues and opportunities. That we find that the knowledge is critical to add value. If companies can't help you, they don't understand you or your issues. So we need to invest the time to really understand the individuals, the products, the operations in order to ask that second and third question that gets us to the value add that we can bring to the relationship.
Clearly, you've worked with a lot of businesses over the years. I can imagine you've really seen some stuff. I'm curious to hear what you've learned from that. What makes some companies last for generations while others seem to flame out? For instance, I would imagine that a company's ability to adapt to trends is a factor. I mean, aren't many buggy whip makers around now, are there?
No, there's not many buggy whip makers, but I guess there's current analogies to buggy whip makers that are out there. Don't realize that they're about to be run over by the competition. But over the years, it's become clear to me that in order to increase your chances of success and to potentially last for generations, you need to work on the business, not just in the business. And what I mean by that is we all show up at work every day. We're trying to put product out the door or doing the service that we do, and our heads down, and we're absorbed in the day-to-day activities of our business. I found that the truly successful businesses and the lasting businesses build in processes to work on the business. It allows them to pull back from the trees, see what's really happening to the business, For example, seeing that, something's happening with buggy whips that we might need to change things. Working on the business, some examples might be successful companies will implement some form of a strategic planning process. Usually it's done offsite or with a segment of the management team. The focus usually on a strategic planning session would be, to assess the strengths of the businesses, the weaknesses, the threats, and opportunities. So it's usually called a SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis. And then once you get those all down, the management team prioritizes, and then they set forward on a plan to tackle them on an ongoing basis. So that's extremely helpful to allow you to pull back and assess what's happening with the business, basically improve the business. And then the second is a business coach. We all see athletes, we all seem to follow the sporting teams. Every team, every athlete seems to have a coach that, again, can pull back to 40,000 feet, look from the outside, and give them tips and help on how to improve their performance. Same thing with a business. The ones that last, the ones that really are successful are the ones that are getting that outside input, whether it be internally through a strategic planning process or externally through a business coach.
How often do you recommend organizations do a strategic planning process? I imagine it's ongoing. It's got to be reiterative in some aspects, but at what point do you start the cycle over again?
Normally, there's like a 3-year window is what you see. So you're laying out 3 to 5 years into the future. You do your SWOT analysis. You put your plan in process. You build your structure inside your organization to maintain the discipline to continually work on the business, because you can't just go off site, spend a couple days, think through big picture what you're going to do, and then you get back into the office and the flames are coming off of producing the product, and you suspend all working on the business. So, but there's usually a 3 to 5 year window, and you will update it each year, but you don't go through a full blown re-evaluation of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats until like the 3rd year. That's normally what you see. And then on the strategic planning, many times you'll bring in an outside facilitator that might be a process person that understands the process of strategic planning, or it might be an industry person that has, not only do they have a process as to do strategic planning, but they have an intimate knowledge of your industry. So someone in the integrators industry would be able to potentially facilitate your strategic planning.
I'm pretty sure I can guess the answer to this next question, but what the heck? What about successful companies' approach to their customers?
Approach to customers, we found that the top performers are immersed in a customer-focused thinking. And what I mean by that is that, you got to see things from the customer's perspective. But many times what we do is we pull together as a team and we identify a customer problem and we talk about it and we come up with a solution to that customer problem without ever talking to the customer. So it sounds obvious, but the top performers have figured out it's critical to interact with the customers and industry leaders. So outside of your customer base as well, those inside the industry is critical to ask questions and listen and learn. I think the big thing is asking questions and listening. And then the net effect is to see things, the problems, the issues, the opportunities from the customer's perspective. So, and then the final thing in that area, I guess, as it relates to customer focus, is you learn from the feedback. We get feedback all the time. Many times it's negative. They're not happy with the product. There's an issue or something with the product or service, and it comes in a negative fashion. But how does the entity, how does the company train themselves to take that negative feedback and turn it into a positive as an opportunity to improve what they're doing and improve the product?
I'm sure as companies scale, processes and procedures become more important. It's one thing when it's just one guy in his truck in a garage somewhere, and then a completely other thing once a company grows. Can you speak to that a bit?
Based on my experience, a lack of documented processes, just procedures, processes that are basically enforced. They have to be enforced is the number one inhibitor to growth. In other words, they grow to a certain size and they hit the glass ceiling and they come back down because eventually the operation will grow to a level of dysfunction that it can't be managed. It can't be managed by individuals. You have to have systems in place to allow the systems to help manage the business, not the individuals. And many times when you start with smaller businesses, it's the owner or the individual that started the business is the one that's the glue that's holding it together. You need to transition into more systems and processes as you grow to allow the organization to break through that glass ceiling. An example I've got, I was out at one of my smaller clients which is a manufacturer that does a lot of custom design and build product. And they were running into some issues out on the production floor with the product. And every time they ran into issues out on the floor, they had to pull the owner out of the offices where he was doing a lot of design, sell work. He was selling and design work, and pull him out into the plant. And he was a key cog in the problem resolution. So what they did is they started to document problem resolution procedures and steps, and even did videotaping, and then they started to put monitors out on the plant floor so that when the production people ran into those issues, they were able to rely on the system versus the individual members of the management team to carry them through a breakthrough, something that was critical. So I ask a lot of my clients, especially the smaller ones, to explain what would happen if the owner or a critical member of the management team are pulled out of the office, even for a short duration of time. And usually what you find, if you go through that thought process and you identify those issues that might occur, that's where you start with, and you address those, and you can allow the organization to grow.
Well, I did it. I attended my first CSIA executive conference. And do you know what the best part about it was? It was meeting and hearing from CSIA members and learning how the association impacts real lives. I've been working with associations for my whole career, and I can honestly say I have never experienced a group of business professionals so willing to share, collaborate, and support one another. That's why I'm so excited to be able to tell you about the newest CSIA membership offer. From now until the 2020 Executive Conference in May in New Orleans, companies that join CSIA will receive an automatic 40% discount off the conference registration fee. Look, this isn't about boosting attendance. It's about making sure CSIA members can fully experience the most valuable benefit the association has to offer, the CSIA Executive Conference. Ready to learn more? Visit www.controlsys.org/CSIA combo. See you in the Big Easy. In your experience, do you find that some companies struggle to be open to new ideas from outsiders in particular?
Yeah, it's human nature, as mentioned earlier. It's defensive. It's just the way that we, have a tendency to reject new ideas, reject feedback. But companies need to ask themselves, are the team members encouraged to solicit new ideas? Training to support the objective. If you want to be more open, if you want to be more positive and open to new ideas, you got to set in a system to train people and reward people. But my experience is that most companies really struggle in this area.
Another area that I hear about companies really struggling is finding and retaining talent, particularly in this economy, not only in the U.S., but globally. How do successful companies tackle this thorny challenge?
Finding the talent, the cornerstone is your culture and your general work environment, and then obviously the compensation has to be competitive. I don't think compensation has to be number one compared to your competitors mostly, because there's usually non-monetary things that make a significant difference as to whether someone stays or leaves. But companies definitely have to be more creative, and I see that up and down the line in my client base where they're being more creative. So examples, of things that companies that are doing out there, they're refining their onboarding programs just to make a better first impression when people come on board, and communications and what the company is all about and what the culture is and where the mission is. Similar to being customer centric, you should also be employee centric. Have you ever sat down and asked them what they want? Most times they'll be very honest and tell you rather than trying to assume or try to figure out on your own what they want. Ask them. Critical part, I think, for the recruiting and retaining the talent is to be transparent. They want information, good or bad, regarding how things are going. I always use the example when I'm talking to clients that imagine you're in a plane and management is in the cockpit, and the employees are all in row 26, and we're hitting turbulence. That happens in business all the time. We hit business turbulence, whether it be, rough situations where we lost a customer or something else happened. But management is in the cockpit. They can see what's happening. They can assess the situation, and they realize we're not going to crash. However, those employees that are back in row 26 that can't see out the window, out the cockpit, they're the ones that usually think negatively of whatever that turbulence might be, and they're making decisions. And they're making decisions many times that are adverse to the objectives of the company. So be more transparent, good or bad information, I think that's helpful to from a retention standpoint. That's what I find in my client base. Skill development training programs. A lot of companies now are doing community outreach programs. Again, a chance to team build, get people. You want to get people more vested and tied into the organization. Those are things that are a little bit more creative that I find companies are doing, and the more successful ones seem to be hitting on more of those than less of those. I
think that airplane analogy is really spot on, but it did give me a little anxiety just listening to you say it, I have to admit. Okay, another topic that I have to believe is relevant to the discussion of long-term success is company culture. You spoke to that a little bit previously. What has your experience taught you about that?
My experience is most companies, they don't really take the time to clearly understand what their culture is. I mean, it takes time for the team to self-reflect and sort of document who they are and what they value and what they're all about. It's not right or wrong. It just is. It's just who you are. That's who you are as an organization, how you treat your employees, how you treat your customers, what your dress code is, what the atmosphere is like. It just is. So, and you might not like it once you've documented or pulled back and looked at yourself and said, this is what my culture is. And it can be changed. It can be changed by training or management initiatives, or, it can be changed a lot by hiring or eliminating employees out of the workforce, because that alters your culture. But we found that the more successful companies, they just take the time to have a clear and realistic picture of the culture, the existing culture or aspirational, where they want to go. And it's invaluable for them to make decisions. Team members, management decisions in general, to have a clearer picture of who we are and where we want to go. So I think teams need to, just like strategic planning, you need to pull back and work on the business. Culture is the same way. You got to pull back and sort of self-reflect and look in the mirror and get a true read on who you are.
When it comes to the financial side of things, what do successful companies do that others might not?
Well, the companies the high flyers that I have that do well, they never wait until the financial statements are issued to determine whether they made money or not. They know there's some leading indicator or indicators out there. It might be, the number of bids, outstanding bids won, loss percentage, something that tells them on a day-to-day basis or a week-to-week basis that, we're doing well, we're making money, we're bringing revenue in, we're cost containing, or we've right-sized, the organization, and it fits. So long before the financial comes out on the 15th or of the day of the following month, they know that they're making money. So that's a critical piece that I see for most of the successful companies. They always know their financial position. The successful ones, a financial position is your balance sheets, your snapshot, where you at right now, what's your cash position, what's your availability on your line of credit. As they run the business, they know it. There's never a surprise. I mean, the successful ones never have to call the bank at the last minute to get an increase in their line of credit because they had some surprise that comes up. They've got a structure in place, whether it be a cash flow, a weekly cash flow analysis, or monthly cash flow analysis, or a review of their balance sheet. They're constantly projecting out the impact of all significant decisions, and they're trying to get a true picture of as they go right into the future from their existing financial position. So they're definitely proactive up and down the line, and they know where they make money, why they make money, and it's critical for the success from a financial side of things.
One section of the CSIA Best Practices Manual addresses succession. So I was doing a little research about this topic and found some data that indicates 3 in 5 small businesses do not have a business succession plan. Does this stat align with your experience? And more importantly, why does it even matter?
I would say, yeah, 2 out of 5 have documents. So, what I mean by documents is they have a buy-sell document that, or they have a redemption agreement in language in their LLC operating agreement. They've got life insurance policies. They've got things in terms of, if there's certain triggering events that they'll buy or buy out a partner or be bought out, and it'll dictate what's happening. So the documents many times, a couple, 2 out of 5, maybe a little bit higher in my experience, but it's almost none of them have a functional or operational aspect of a succession plan. So, taking it beyond the documents to say, all right, what happens if something happened to the owner? Where are we going eventually with this business to sell the business? What is the game plan to sell the business? They don't have a tendency not to want to talk about that. I guess it's probably because it's a difficult discussion to have. But it definitely matters. A well-documented and communicated succession plan, ensures all stakeholders are protected. It's basically an insurance policy. It ensures the owners or owner of the business. It protects the employees, which are a stakeholder. It protects the customers, the vendors, the bank, everybody. If you have a well-thought-out idea relative to a succession plan. Now, it could be that how am I going to exit the business, sell, cash in per se, or it could be that catastrophic event that's coming up. How am I going to plan for that? And that's usually the ones that I get focused in on, because you don't know where those things are going to happen. I've had the misfortune of having 3 client deaths over the last 10 years in my client base. So I've seen firsthand, the impact of a well thought out, succession plan on the business. It's a powerful exercise to walk through what if scenarios. In other words, every client that I go out to at a year end, I talk about the succession plan. What happens if something happened to you or other owners in the business? And I want to have a narrative to be able to understand how they would direct things should they be pulled out of the business for a period of time. And that's a part of the succession plan. The other is just talking about, where do you want to go with the business? Do you want to sell this thing in a 5-year, 10-year, 15-year time frame? If so, let's put things in place to position yourself to be able to exit the business at some point in time. And that could be an internal exit through your management team buying you, an external exit. There's a variety of different ways, but you need to sit down and think it through. It's not a tough exercise, but it's definitely beneficial.
Are some companies more at risk than others in terms of not having a documented succession plan?
Yes, I think that if you have an older management team, I think you're probably more at risk than other companies. Usually I've got a couple clients in that situation. And the advice that I give to them is you've got your key management team players that are looking at your age and trying to figure out, if you haven't communicated a succession plan or what your intentions are, that the intentions might be negative. It might be the business is going to be sold shortly and they might be out of a job. So they start to make decisions that, again, might not be in the best interest of the business. So in these instances, it's critical to not only have a plan, but to make sure it's clearly communicated to the team so they fully understand what's going on. All right, I own the business. I'm 70 years old. I want to operate this thing until I'm 85. But if something happens to me, this is what happens with the business, so they can clearly see it. And maybe those plans might include key members of that management team, or there might be ways to incentivize them to not want to jump ship just based upon perceptions.
225,000. That's how many page views the Industrial Automation Exchange pulled in last year. What's more, 75% of them were unique. What does that mean for you? Simple. If you are a system integrator or supplier who is not maximizing your presence on the exchange, you are missing out on this traffic and the collective authority of this digital marketing powerhouse. The good news? The exchange offers upgrades, packages, and display advertising opportunities to ensure your brand is top of mind during your customers' complicated, research-based buying journey. To learn more about packages and upgrades, visit www.csiexchange.com/packages. To learn more about advertising opportunities, visit www.csiexchange.com/display. Let's face it, it's a digital world out there and you need to ensure your company doesn't get left behind. Let the exchange go to work for you. What's your favorite part of the job?
Oh, I guess I love being out talking to the clients, definitely at their place of business. Each one's different, unique. They got, every client we walk in, we talked about culture earlier. There's a vibe, there's a feel to it. Every client that I have loves talking about their product. They just, they loved if they're on a plant floor, they want to show me things that are on the plant floor. Just past week, I was out at a client of mine that is an integrator. They do equipment for the auto plants all over the world. Most of it fit and finish portion of the assembly of a vehicle. But I had a chance to walk their floor and see some new product that's coming out. They're starting to go into the powertrain section where they're doing some different types of equipment, which is really kind of neat to see. And then they're also starting a new division to get into a whole new segment outside of automotive and a new piece of equipment. So those types of opportunities, it's fun, it's enjoyable, plus it gives me information, understand what they're doing, why they're hiring, what's happening, and I can advise them down the road. But nothing's more exciting and enjoyable than you're driving home from work and you've got off the phone from a client and you've had a chance to add value or identify a problem or help them capitalize on an opportunity. That's the fun stuff of the job.
I totally get that. Any final words of advice for businesses who want to go the distance?
Might be corny, but life is short. It is. After having seen 3 business owners pass away in the last 10 years, it's all my business owners and most closely held business owners work extremely hard. They love what they do. But how do we work smarter, not harder? And I think the strategic planning and the working on your business and improving the processes and procedures can have a dramatic impact, and not only in improving your business, but improving potentially the quality of life for the owners of the business. So, and allow them to be a little bit more time and an opportunity to enjoy the success. So, that's probably the advice I try to give to my clients, and that to me is the big picture thing that people need to look at.
Well, that's it for today's episode of Talking Industrial Automation. If you are interested in learning more about Clayton McKervey, you can find them on the Industrial Automation Exchange at www.csiexchange.com. Thanks for listening, and thank you, Jim, for joining me today.
Thank you.
If you enjoy this podcast, please subscribe in iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also help others find us by sharing your favorite episodes with colleagues. Thanks for listening to the Talking Industrial Automation podcast. Thanks also to bensound.com for the music bumpers. Until next time.